Welcome, everyone. This is the DFS Bum. All right, we have a Monday night slate showdown here. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals. Before we get into the game, have some pretty good news to report back. Did okay on Saturday night showdown on the first game slate. Ended up getting first in that. It was a pretty big tie. Had Allen had that monster game, and then you had Fant, Singletary in that last minute run. Kind of bolted me up. I was in and out of first all night with, actually basically in first most of that game, just different lineups. I think at one point it was such a common tie. It was only like $92 for first, and I think the most unique lineup I had was maybe a couple grand. Probably a somewhat straightforward game just with the players, but you can see here Allen, Fant, Singletary, Gordon, and Beasley, and like I say, really nothing too shocking out of that lineup. But I tell you what, it was kind of funny is I always talk about the kickers. Never seen two kickers in the top lineup, and son of a bitch, last night it happened in that second game on Fanduel, and it was the weirdest lineup. Too, it had Aaron Jones at the MVP spot, both the quarterbacks, and then both the kickers. And what the hell? There's really just that's such a. Usually there's like a correlation of some sorts, and you wouldn't think it like the quarterback to the kicker. Usually you'd expect a couple some receivers or some tight ends in that mix. But anyway, so it just kind of proves to show you anything can happen. But the fucked up thing about it though too is that I think it was basically about most of the salary was used in that lineup, so it was a pretty big tie. So it was only maybe 11 or 1200 for first. So anyhow, I'm still not that big of a believer playing both kickers together, but hey, I guess anything can happen. And then Mariota on Thursday night, so it's been pretty weird week so far. But anyway, let's get into the game here. So quarterback wise, we got Roethlisberger and Finley. And Finley, third string quarterback. Burrows, of course, as most of you guys know, had gotten hurt there a few weeks ago, and then his backup has already been hurt. So you could see this maybe being an ugly game. I can't really see myself putting anybody on the Bengals into an MVP spot this week. If you did, I think that would definitely make you a little bit different, and with the potential to have those big ties. There's something to be said for doing that strategy, but if you were going to do that, I think it'd probably be somebody from a skill position. I just can't see that quarterback being in there unless you did want to go for the real contrarian play. Now, and another part to build on that too, it's just the matchup. And even if this was say Burrows or something, Steelers number 2 overall defense, number 2 against opposing quarterbacks. So like I say, you could see it getting ugly on DraftKings where you had the defense in the lineups. You could see that being a nice play to have. All right, now with Roethlisberger here, pretty decent matchup for him. I feel with the Bengals, their 21st overall defense, 16 against opposing quarterbacks. Price-wise, he's coming in at $16,000 on FanDuel. He's going to be $14,800 on DraftKings. So you could definitely see him being an MVP spot on FanDuel. Even in DraftKings with that price, I could see him, maybe being faded over some of the skilled players or from the skill positions. But, nonetheless, he's going to be a guy that I'll certainly play in some of my MVP spots. And like I mentioned with Finley, I just don't see him in the MVP spot for me. He'll probably be in some lineups, but even with his price tag of $13,500, kind of pricey just for the third string quarterback. And then on DraftKings, he's coming in $2,400 so it'd be about $11,100. And so there, again, just with the matchup or everything, hard to be excited about him. All right, let's look at some of the pass catchers here. And this is probably where, we really have got a lot of talent to choose from here. It's kind of too bad that Burrows doesn't play in, that would really make this an exciting game just with the guys that are here. So, starting with Pittsburgh, we have Deontay Johnson, $14,500 on FanDuel, $14,100 on DraftKings. For the year, 9.4 targets, 11.1 points. Matchup for all the Steelers guys is favorable. Going against that Bengals defense, they're 19th positionally against wide receivers. So For me, I'll probably take all these receivers and work them into that MVP spot. Um, from there, Juju Smith-Schuster coming at 14,000 on FanDuel, 13,300 on DraftKings, averaging about 8 targets for the year, 11.5 points. Again, another good solid guy there. Tyler Boyd coming in 12,500 on FanDuel, 11,300 on DraftKings, averaging 8 targets for the year, almost 12 points. The Bengals receivers have a pretty decent matchup going against the Steelers. That'd probably be one area in the Steelers defense where maybe they struggle. They are 18th against opposing wide receivers. Again, is that enough with the third string quarterback for me to get a guy like Boyd into that MVP spot? Probably not. Same thing with Higgins or Green, but it certainly would be guys that are going to be lower owned into those spots. So again, that is something that you could, if that's kind of like your angle to be that contrarian play, it would be something to consider. With that being said, let's go down here. Next guy, we've got Claypool, 11,500 on FanDuel, 11,200 on DraftKings, 6.5 targets for the year, also about 11.5 points. So that's, again, for me, another guy I'm going to work into that MVP spot. Then we've got T. Higgins coming in at 10,000 on FanDuel, 1,300 less on DraftKings, 7 targets for the year, 10.5 points. AJ Green, 7 targets for the year, only about 6 points. For him, though, he's just coming off a 15-point game last week. 9,500 price tag on FanDuel, coming in at 7,200 on DraftKings, so a little bit price or a little bit cheaper there. And then the last guy out of the pool that I would probably work with would be James Washington. He's really played well the last couple of weeks. For the year, only about 3.5, 4 targets, 6 points. But then you go back the last 2 weeks, he's had 15 points and 10 points, 4 targets and 6. If we go back longer before that, he was kind of quiet. But if you guys watch the Steelers, they'll often go out there and play a 4-receiver set at times with either running back or even Ebron in there too. So is a guy that's definitely out there on the field. So it's a guy to certainly consider. Only 7,500 on FanDuel, so a little bit cheaper compared to some of these guys. So really out of any of the guys that we've gone through so far as him coming in, below, $10,000 as far as upside. I guess AJ Green at 9,500, but if you go down, a little bit cheaper than that, he's probably a guy that definitely could get up there into the double digits. I don't think I would take him into my MVP spot, though. That would be probably a little bit too much for me personally, but that is not a bad contrarian play. All right, let's go there. Look at the tight ends real quick. And out of this group, I tell you, Ebron is playing pretty solid lately. For the year, 6.5 targets, about 8 points. We go back the last 5 weeks, his points 6, 10, 9, 12, and 5. 8,500 price tag on FanDuel. 7,300 on DraftKings. Matchup is great for him. Bengals are 31st against opposing tight ends. For me, is that enough to put him in at the MVP spot? No. Again, potential contrarian play there for people, but I just don't think, for me, that's just a little bit too much. And then outside of that, like Vance McDonald, he hasn't done shit this year. And then I guess if you wanted anybody, from the Bengals, Drew Sample, averaging about 3.5, 4 targets for the year. Same thing with his points. We go back the last 5 weeks. Points 4-8, 4-4, and 1. He's 6,500 on FanDuel and then coming in at 4,700 on DraftKings. So that's a guy to potentially buy down, but I just don't really see it happening. Now, I suppose this could be, maybe the thought if you had like a game script or an idea. It's this third string tight end. Maybe he's third string quarterback. Maybe he's going to be dumping down to, this tight end down to the flats or just short little passes or little things off to like the running backs when you get to, to talk about them. So, maybe something like that happens, but, where it's a little bit unique, where he gets targeted a little bit more, just given the circumstances of the game. But, I guess that's about the only only like kind of game script or narrative in my mind that would possibly make sense. Um, and so again, it's really like for me, maybe I'll throw them in a couple lineups, but it's hard for me to want to devote too much of my salary, or excuse me, my bankroll overall, and just the amount of lineups that I have. All right, let's go here and look at some of the running backs. So we have James Conner. Looks like he's banged up a little bit, so just keep an eye out on him for the year. Averaging 2.5 targets, about 14 carries, 11 points. Nice matchup if you're to play for this, and really for any of the Pittsburgh running backs. Cincinnati's 22nd against running backs. So, like I say, with Conner, just keep an eye out on him. For him, he has, like I mentioned, just banged up in general here. It seems like the second half of the season. So, last 5 games, his points have been 2, and then 0. I don't think he played that game. 11, 6, and 3. So, not a lot there, unfortunately, to go off of. We've got Benny Snell, and he did a pretty decent job, I thought, when Conner was out. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but Conner's, he's 11,000 on Fanduel, 10,800 on DraftKings. I don't think I can justify him going into the MVP spot, but I don't know. Maybe he might go in a couple lineups, just given the matchup. But again, I can't really see me getting too heavy with that. Now with Snell for the year, 6.5 carries, about a target, only 4 points. It could be pretty easy to fade him. I don't know. I'll probably throw him in a couple lineups. I'll make sure that Conner isn't there in those lineups. And I tell you what, too, overall, with me on me playing on FanDuel, with there basically being 5 spots, it'd be really hard pressed to see me having 3 Bengals in any of my lineups. I just don't really see it. So I think that'll probably be a rule that I'll make, just overall. And then from here, we go down to Bernard, Giovanni Bernard. He's coming in with a price tag of 8,000 on FanDuel, 7,000 on DraftKings. I think for his price tag, his potential to come in and get involved, not too bad. He's been averaging about 7 points for the year. Matchup for the running back is going to be tough because Pittsburgh is 2nd overall, but it's a guy to certainly consider. And then let's see from there. Look like we have Perine and Trayvon Williams. Those are some guys a little bit cheaper. Both those guys last week, Perine carried the ball 10 times, had 2 targets, 5 points. Williams carried the ball 12 times, had 3 targets, 6 points. So there's an opportunity to buy down there. Looked like Samuels was in for a few snaps last week. It has been a little bit underwhelming. I don't know if he was hurt, but last 2 weeks, 5 points and 3. So there are some cheaper guys there that you might want to potentially work in. I guess it's a little bit trickier there. Really overall, you can see a lot of these running backs really may be struggling to break into double digits. I wouldn't really necessarily be surprised by that, just given kind of the nature, especially with Conner. If he is banged up, I can kind of see that with Snell and Samuels, just kind of working those guys in just to try to keep them all fresh. And you probably figure Steelers are going to, and maybe this game could potentially get ugly. And so if that's the case, then maybe some of these other running backs for the Steelers get a little bit more run, especially if they get a lead. And then with the Bengals struggling to defend the run, where that might be where like one of the odd things that happens. One of these guys ends up having a pretty big night. That wouldn't be out of the question. And then kicker-wise, like I say, there's Bullock, and I could see him, despite even what had happened there that last game with both the kickers in there. I think you can see it really hard for the Bengals to be able to move the ball in general. With Bullock, I could see Boswell though being stacked. That wouldn't be in my mind all that bad. He's been averaging 9 points. If you look at it for the year, the Bengals are giving up, basically they're 30th, so they're almost last. So they do give a lot of points to kickers. So Boswell will probably be a guy that I will end up stacking, particularly like I mentioned, in this game. In fact, I'd probably end up seeing the stacks where I could take, him and probably do a stack of like 4 Steelers, including, with basically Big Ben and him, and then just 2 other players that fit. And then you know, maybe get some of those receivers there for the Bengals or whatever. You know, I could see some lineups like that potentially making sense and doing well. So I think that is pretty much it, guys. So didn't quite get enough time to do the Sunday night video. So I hope you guys would go out and kick some ass with that. If you guys subscribe to the channel, please do that. And then also, I'm hoping to probably get that NBA video out. I was hoping to on Sunday night, but they're updating the stats still for it, so it might end up being Monday, but that's coming up Tuesday evening, so super excited about that as well. So, all right, guys, go out, kick some ass tonight and Monday night, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya.